Leon Panetta served as President Obama's Secretary of Defense and CIA Director. He is with us now exclusively. Secretary Panetta, good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
I have to ask you about this op-ed. I don't know if we've ever seen anything like this before. A foreign leader basically urging Americans directly not to engage in military conflict. What do you think of the tactic?
Well, you know, I've worked with the Russians in a number of capacities, particularly as CIA Director and as Secretary of Defense, and I think it's pretty clear that the whole purpose of that was to try to weaken our resolve and to try to make sure that we would not fulfill our pledge to conduct military action if we have to. So I think he was trying to, in his own way, weaken the United States in the effort to negotiate these issues.
It's a fascinating op-ed because on the one hand it presents what appears to be a reasoned argument. It lectures Americans on international law and gets in a few digs while he's at it. He writes, quote, "It is alarming that military intervention in internal conflicts in foreign countries has become commonplace for the United States. Millions around the world increasingly see America not as a model of democracy, but as relying solely on brute force, cobbling coalitions together under the slogan, 'You're either with us or against us.'" I know foreign policy is nuanced, but when you look at the situation right now, is Putin outmaneuvering President Obama? Is he trying to play President Obama?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think we have to understand that President Putin should be the last person to lecture the United States about our human values and our human rights and what we stand for. We know what we stand for. We know what we're fighting for in the world. And I think his effort to try to do this by a column in the New York Times is just not going to work. We know who the Russians are.
Well, let's talk about this larger deal that is potentially on the table, diplomacy instead of military intervention in Syria. Do you think it's for real, or do you think this is a stalling tactic?
I think we have to be very careful and cautious in the way we approach this. Obviously, we have to pursue it. I think the President wants to pursue it. Secretary Kerry is there trying to see if we can get someplace. But I don't think we ought to kid ourselves. This is going to be very tough. The Russians, frankly, have been playing for time along with the Syrians. This could be a stalling tactic. I do believe that we have to set some time limits here, that we can't just let this drag on.
You'd give a deadline for diplomacy?
I don't know if we set a deadline. I think internally we have to make clear that this cannot just drag on, that ultimately we have to make progress here. This is complicated, and it's not going to be easy to do. But what the last thing is to have this thing drag on for months and then have the United States' credibility harmed by all of this.
Very quickly, you were the one, when still serving in the administration, who agreed with then CIA Director Petraeus, with Secretary of State Clinton, that arming the rebels at that time, about a year ago, may have actually tipped the balance. Did the president miss his moment by rejecting that advice?
Well, I understand why the president made that decision. He was worried about arms getting into the wrong hands. But now he's made that decision, and I'm glad he has. We have to back up the rebels. We've got to do everything we can to ensure that we have some kind of peaceful transition. But most importantly, we have to be credible in what the president's threat as commander-in-chief was all about, that our national security interests demand that if we can't get them to cough up their chemical weapons, that we will conduct this limited attack.
Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, it's a pleasure to have you here, sir. Thank you. Now we will take a turn, get a check of the morning's other top stories from Natalie. Good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. We're starting off